Under the Colorado Capitol's gold dome is a stack of gold bars. How much would you guess that's worth?
I would guess that this one's probably around 10,000, whereas the little small gold bar, it's worth 45,000.
We're in a little room tucked away on the first floor of the Capitol, next to a vault full of valuable items.
We get a lot of coins, and these are gold coins. And then this is our yellow diamond. I think it's 6.4 carats to be exact.
The large diamond ring sits glistening on a display table. It doesn't belong to the state of Colorado, but it's here at the Capitol in state custody because no one has stepped forward to claim it. Similar for the gold bars and coins. There's also war medals and baseball cards.
Bianca Gardelli oversees the vault and its inhabitants in her work for the Treasurer's office. She says the unclaimed property that comes in can get a bit weird.
We get a lot of teeth. I was just going to say that was gold teeth we get. People put that in their safe deposit boxes. You'd be surprised how many we get.
Then there was the time they got a box of dirt.
Which is concerning because you get a box of dirt and you're like, you're concerned about, does it have gold in it? Does it have ashes in it? What is in it?
For the record, after conducting lots of tests, they concluded it was just plain old dirt. These are some of the items that make up the physical side of Colorado's Unclaimed Property Fund. A giant lost and found of all sorts of things.
Sometimes you have wills. Sometimes you just have random paperwork, to be honest with you.
Gardelli's team is tasked with trying to reunite these lost items, plus money, lots and lots of unclaimed money, with their rightful owners. It's a challenging goal, and there are all sorts of obstacles along the way for both the state and for the owners looking to get their property back.
But with so much money at stake, those unclaimed assets are an increasingly attractive target for cash-strapped state lawmakers trying to shore up a tight budget. This is Purplish from CPR News and the Colorado Capitol News Alliance, a show about Colorado politics and policy. I'm Benta Berkland, and back in the studio with me today is Purplish producer Stephanie Wolf. Happy to have you.
It's so good to be here again.
I'll say you're always here, but you're just not on mic.
That's true. I am always in the studio during these tapings, but it's always a rare thing to be behind the microphone and actually talking.
Well, we're glad when you do it, and it's fun to hear you.
So in my head, when we first started talking about this unclaimed property vault, I was picturing something out of a Bond film or some kind of big heist movie. I'm thinking like Ocean's 11. So how does the reality match up?
Sadly, I'm going to have to let you down here. The vault is a little less 007 and honestly more like a typical storage closet you'd probably see in any office in the state.
Okay, so maybe if we're doing movie references, it's more in the office space vein.
Yes, exactly. I would say that the outside of the vault does look like what you'd expect. It's this huge, thick metal door, and it opens silently. But inside the room itself, it's full of neatly labeled white boxes. But as you can tell from some of the tape we played, the treasurer's office does like showing some of this stuff off.
Like that yellow diamond.
Yes, that was so gorgeous. And for a moment, I thought they were going to let me put this ring on. I got really excited, but that was not happening. And they did used to let people do that with the objects, but not anymore. And they also have other really valuable things, baseball cards, like a Lou Gehrig card, and a Byzantine gold and garnet necklace from the 5th to 6th century AD.
Interesting. That is quite the eclectic collection they have there.
But as fun as that stuff is, most unclaimed property, it's not old treasures. They're intangible assets, things like abandoned accounts, uncashed checks, and unclaimed tax refunds.
Okay, so in case it isn't already clear, our focus this episode is on Colorado's Unclaimed Property Fund, which is $2 billion worth of unclaimed property the state has in its custody and is legally supposed to give back to its rightful owners if they ever come forward. But that turns out to be easier said than done.
Some have called for changes to this fund, and lawmakers keep trying to dip into it, which got all of us at Purplish curious about how this fund is intended to work and why lawmakers trying to use some of that money can get to be a messy situation. The Unclaimed Property Fund isn't actually all that old. Lawmakers set it up in the late 1980s as a consumer protection effort. The idea here is the state can take custody of these dormant assets, but it can't just take them. It has to try to give them back to their rightful owners. Every state has something like this. There's actually a website called missingmoney.com that helps you look for lost assets in any state you want. Colorado's Treasurer Dave Young talked to me a little bit about it.
I know it sounds a little scammy, but there's a map there, and you can actually, if you lived in another state, you can actually go click in that map on the state where you lived and go to their unclaimed property program and check to see if you left some property or money there.
I'm sorry, but missingmoney.com, I would probably think that's a fake site as well if I came across it.
I mean, that makes sense, and that's a huge challenge for the state. They want to be really user-friendly for the public, but kind of the more approachable you are, the more it does look like a scam, and that's one of the hardest parts, they told me, in trying to reunite people with their money, getting people to believe this is legit.
And not a scam.
Right. Colorado does send out letters to some people with assets in the fund. They told me that for every 100 letters they send, they may get only 10 responses. And Gardelli, who we heard from at the beginning of the episode, she told me about trying over and over again to get $50,000 from a life insurance policy to a beneficiary in Georgia.
And she's like, "You're lying, stop calling me. This is against the law to call me." She thought I was obviously not someone to depend on, and she kept hanging up on me, so I sent her letters.
I mean, I got a voicemail just the other day about something that sounds very similar to this, and it was definitely a scam. So
You're sure it wasn't $50,000?
I mean, now I'm questioning, but I think that's a pretty, I don't know, that seems like a pretty probably common response, especially in this day and age with all the robocalls and spam calls. But I have to ask, did the woman ever claim that money?
She did, and she was really grateful for it. But, you do have to overcome that skepticism.
I mean, the question I keep coming back to is how do people's stuff and or money end up in this unclaimed property fund in the first place? Basically, how does property in the state of Colorado become unclaimed?
The Treasurer's Office said one of the biggest sources is state tax refunds that don't get cashed. There's also a lot of things you'd probably expect, savings accounts, brokerage accounts that go dormant and end up getting sent to the state. Under Colorado law, if a company or other entity can't get money to the right person, after about 3 to 5 years, it can turn that money, that asset, to the state as unclaimed. And Treasurer Young actually experienced this with his own family. His grandmother had 3 life insurance policies, didn't tell anyone about it, and when she registered these policies, she put in an incorrect address.
We weren't looking for the check after she passed away because we didn't know the policies existed, and they went to the wrong address and bounced back to the insurance company.
This was pre-internet, and at the time, newspapers would print pages and pages of names of people with unclaimed property.
And I just happened to look through, and I saw my mom's name in there 3 times, 3 policies. I said, "Hey, Mom, you've got unclaimed property." And she was an accountant, so she was offended. I take good care of my money. I didn't lose any money or anything like that.
He said it was about $3,500, pretty significant, especially in the 90s. And I'll mention, not only is there a lot of money in Colorado's unclaimed property fund, it does belong to a lot of people. The state says it has more than 15 million names of owners in its database.
Okay, so if you're one of those 15 million people who has missing money in the fund, how do you get it back?
The state has set up a whole website to do it.
Ready to claim your property? Start by typing your name or business into the search bar. To find yourself quicker, you can add any places you've lived before, like cities or zip codes.
Okay, so that was the Treasury Department put out this snazzy how-to video to show exactly how to search the inventory.
It's something I'd never personally done, but when we're preparing for this episode, I said, hey, I should put my name in this database. I did that, lo and behold, I also have unclaimed property, about $215. So I got to see how this works for myself.
Okay, so then walk us through it, Benta.
For me, it was pretty easy. I filed a claim and I put in some personal information. Took me maybe a minute, probably less. And then I got an email just a couple minutes after that said the state didn't need any more documentation from me, and I will be getting a check pretty soon for a couple $100.
Okay, I have to say that sounds a lot smoother and easier than I would have anticipated.
But it's not always that easy.
My husband passed away going on 8 years, and there was something in a bank account that was actually a joint account, and so I went in and filed a claim.
This is Nisa Oldefest. She lives in Denver. She's 74. And that account she was trying to claim, it was actually a couple bank accounts, had about $800 in it. It's money she could really use. But she said the state just asked for document after document to prove she had a right to this money.
They wanted a scanned thing of my Colorado driver's license, which I sent to them. And then they wanted proof that I lived where we lived before we got married. And it was a townhouse that I owned 30 some odd years before.
Wow. And was all of that enough proof?
Apparently not. She said she also had to submit a copy of her Social Security ID, tax information, and probate court information from her husband's will. And then the state said her adult son was listed on one of the bank accounts and she needed to get his signature. But they're currently estranged.
I gave up. I figured there's nothing that I can give them that's going to prove, they're always going to come up with something that I don't have access to. I mean, I'm for my age, fairly computer savvy. And so I was able to find stuff. But if it was somebody who didn't really know how to access things, then they probably would have given up a long time before.
She told me she started contacting the state and trying to provide this documentation for an entire year before she gave up.
Oh my gosh. That does sound really frustrating and kind of sad. I wonder how many people do just give up. And maybe that's part of why the fund kind of remains in perpetuity.
I think that's possible, depending upon the circumstance.
So anyway, you have about $200 in the fund. Nisa had $800. The woman in Georgia that we heard about earlier, $50,000 in the fund. I mean, there must be a big range in the size of these unclaimed assets.
There definitely is. And when you search names on the website, on the public database, you find lots and lots of entries that are worth just a few dollars. One thing to note, though, about the state's website, you only see the exact dollar amount if it's under $250. Anything higher than that, it just says more than $250. The Treasurer's Office said that's about the median point. Half of assets are worth more than $250 and half are worth less.
And so you had mentioned it was fairly easy to claim your money, which was under that median point. And I wonder, does it get harder for higher value accounts and assets for people to reclaim that property?
I think it depends on a lot of factors, like whose names are on the accounts, how much their information has changed over time. It does make sense that they're more cautious with higher dollar amounts. You don't want people scamming the fund. It could also make it harder on legitimate beneficiaries.
So, can we please real quick revisit some of the crazy stuff in the vault, like that yellow diamond? That's not something that I can imagine just losing track of. Does the state know who the owners are?
That diamond is pretty old, and the state does know who the original owners were. Staff researched when they came to the U.S. from overseas. But it's been tough to find the living heirs and then figure out the precise person responsible to come forward, because only one person can claim it. They can't give it to a family.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why this process can get so challenging. And I can see why something like that, it remains in the vault today. But when it comes to cases like the woman you spoke with, is the state looking at ways to streamline this process to make it easier for people to reclaim their property?
The Treasurer's Office says yes, they're always looking for new ways to reach people. And with technology, the ability to do things online has generally made it a lot easier overall. Treasurer Young said he's really proud of how the fund is working. He said last year the state returned 86,000 claims. That was 12,000 more claims than the previous year.
Mm-hmm. But really, this is part of the job description for the treasurer, right? He's supposed to be doing this.
Yes, the Treasury Department has an obligation to try to reunite unclaimed property and these funds. And conversely, to make sure that the true owner is getting it and it's not going to the wrong person.
Still, you said the fund has about $2 billion worth of stuff in it. Is Colorado realistically ever going to get all of this money back to its rightful owners?
Well, I think that's a question a lot of lawmakers are starting to ask more and more. They see all that money sitting in the state's accounts and think, surely we could be doing something better with this. I'll tell you, that's not the view of Treasurer Young.
Oh, this is just sitting there. Nobody's ever going to claim it isn't really a valid assumption. And, I think it's easy to do.
The temptation to have the state use even just a little bit of that unclaimed property fund has definitely been growing in the legislature. And that's what we're going to talk about next. This is Purplish from CPR News and the Colorado Capital News Alliance.
$2 billion sitting in state accounts, unclaimed, some of it for decades. And at the same time, lawmakers are having to make hundreds of millions of dollars in budget cuts. I can definitely imagine they've got an eye on this money.
They do. Last session, there were two bills that tried to pull $100 million from the Unclaimed Property Trust Fund.
How would that have worked? Can lawmakers really just take this money if the state's supposed to be safeguarding it?
They aren't suggesting in these bills to take the money forever. These were loans, so they were going to borrow the money. I talked with Democratic Representative Jeannie Joseph. She's from Boulder. She was one of the main sponsors of a bill that would have withdrawn $50 million from the fund, paid it back with 1% interest. And she wanted to use that money from the fund to help people make their homes more energy efficient.
The money belongs to the people, but that money's been there for years and it's just sitting there and collecting interest rates. And all we were doing is borrowing some of it so that we can further our decarbonization goals. And we were going to return that money back to the Unclaimed Property Trust Fund.
The measure got through the House. It ultimately failed in the Senate. It didn't help that the treasurer, as we heard, really opposes this idea of borrowing money from the fund. Dave Young's concerns that the money will never get paid back. It's like, wink, wink, sure. This will be a loan and we'll pay you back in 30 years or something.
When we talk about a loan, something that passes the smell test on a loan. So, some real terms and conditions. What is the interest rate that's going to be paid? How quickly is it going to be paid back? What's the term? How often are payments going to be made? I mean, those are all things that you would get into if you were going to a bank and asking for a loan.
Is that common kind of bit of advice? Don't loan money to a family member expecting you're going to get paid back. Just consider it a gift. And Young thinks it's kind of the same with the fund, the way lawmakers would treat it potentially.
The dilemma we get into is the legislature really serious about paying the money back, or is this just kind of a facade to, kind of get over a tough funding situation, and in fact, maybe it never gets paid back.
We've talked a lot on this podcast about the challenges that our state budget has been facing this year. And it seems to get into trouble fairly regularly. This isn't the first time that state lawmakers have faced budgeting woes. So is the fight over taking money out of the fund sort of an eternal struggle against temptation?
Yes, I think it is, definitely. Even though these two bills failed last session, other ones have passed. In the last 20 years, lawmakers have taken $660 million from the fund. A lot of those weren't loans. They just took the money.
Oh, wow.
And the largest single transfer was to cover adult dental care on Medicaid. A lot of members thought that was really critical, that people could get dental care. And in that case, it was a straight withdrawal. You want to hear something ironic?
Always.
Dave Young was in the state legislature when that bill went through.
Okay, let me guess. He voted for this bill.
Yes, he did vote for it, and he was one of the many lawmakers who signed on to sponsor it.
So just goes to show how much a change in job title also comes with a change in priorities.
I think that's right. And it is a tough situation when you're, really facing some budgeting challenges. As treasurer, Young doesn't think this fund will solve the state's financial problems. We've talked about there's a $700 million budget gap. That's not even including about $1 billion of lost money from federal cuts. Young really worries that these funds could easily be tapped out.
I want to make sure they're available for the people so they can actually claim them. And so depending on what the proposal is, if they're asking for private money to fund public projects, this gets to be kind of a dilemma in my mind. And we don't dip into people's private savings accounts when we run short of revenue. No one would even think of doing that.
It sounds like, on one hand, Young, in his role now, is being an absolutist about the whole idea of unclaimed property. All of this money, even if it's never claimed, does belong to someone else. On the other hand, you have the state lawmakers who want to use it and would say that they're just being pragmatic. The records show a large amount of this money is going to sit in limbo forever if they don't put it to use.
That's similar to what Democratic Senator Kyle Mullica told me. He's one of the lawmakers who sees an opportunity here. He led that bill we talked about earlier about decarbonization. Even though that failed, he did manage to pass a different bill that borrows interest from the fund. And that's to help shore up safety net healthcare providers. Mullica chairs the health committee, and that's just a top priority for him.
I think when you're in difficult positions and budgetary positions, and I think even the treasurer recognizes this as a former legislator, that you do have to make decisions, and and you have to make sure that we're doing all that we can to take care of the people of Colorado. And so, obviously, they made decisions when he was in the legislature, and we're going to have to make those decisions too. And what it's going to be, I think, a really difficult budget year.
So it sounds like next year, when lawmakers are looking for creative ways to fund programs on a tight budget again, they may eye the Unclaimed Property Fund again.
I will certainly be surprised if we don't see some bills trying to use this fund next session.
Benta, we've talked about how the fund works, about some of the difficulties that come with getting property out of it, and why the money could be a target for lawmakers. But there's also a legal effort out there that could fundamentally change how the state handles unclaimed property.
Yes, there is 2 Colorado men, one from Fremont County, the other from El Paso County. They filed a lawsuit a few years ago that's still working its way through the federal courts. They're trying to get class action status to cover everyone with property in the fund.
And what are their arguments?
Basically that the state didn't do enough to notify them before taking possession of their unclaimed property, that it's too quick to designate property as unclaimed, and they object to the fact that Colorado has the power to sell unclaimed property if it decides to do so.
Does the state actually sell items?
Yeah, sometimes, and as we talked about, physical objects do make up a part of the unclaimed assets. There have been online auctions, and other states do that as well. The proceeds from this sale stays in the Unclaimed Property Fund, but of course the object would be gone. The lawsuit says the state is unconstitutionally taking this unclaimed property and has abdicated its duty to return it to the rightful owners.
So then what could happen if this lawsuit prevails?
It could more definitively answer the question of whether lawmakers can dip their hands into the fund and how much. The lawsuit says it's illegal for the state to take any private property from citizens and use it to generate interest or income that the state could spend. It could also force Colorado to be more aggressive about contacting people whose accounts go dormant and trying to get their money back to them before it becomes unclaimed.
I'd imagine the state disagrees with their arguments.
Yes, and they note that these two men did successfully search for their property on the website, even if they didn't get a proactive notice, and that if they would just use the process to claim it, it could work smoothly. I'll say this case is convoluted. I'm not sure what may come of it. It was originally dismissed and then revived, but we did want to mention it.
So leaving that lawsuit aside, are there ways people think the fund could be improved?
There are. Senator Mullica, he actually has been trying to get about $1,500 out of the fund that belongs to him. He put his name in the search database when he was running those bills last session. But he said he found the paperwork requirements just really cumbersome, and he hasn't gotten around to it yet. So he doesn't have the money. He thinks the state could find better ways to verify people's claims without making them jump through as many hoops. I think it's a tricky situation with how the state finds that right balance of making the fund secure from imposters, scammers, but easy enough for real people to actually get their property and money back.
And now we're all going to be wondering one other thing. Will anyone ever show up to claim that diamond?
I know. I'm sure they'll do a big media thing if that does ever happen, but they told me that that's an item that they would never auction off, though. It's a significant piece that they want to hold on to.
Very, very interesting.
That's it for this episode. Purplish is a production of member-supported Colorado Public Radio and the Colorado Capital News Alliance.
The CCNA is a collaboration between KUNC News, Colorado Public Radio, Rocky Mountain PBS, and the Colorado Sun, with support from news outlets throughout the state. Funding for the Alliance is provided in part by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I'm Stephanie Wolf.
And I'm Benta Berglund. Our editor is Megan Verlee. Sound design and engineering by Shane Rumsey. Our theme music is by Brad Turner.
Purplish will be back in your feeds in 2 weeks. Subscribe now so you don't miss an episode.
This is Purplish from CPR News and the Colorado Capital News Alliance.
I looked my name in the database, and while I found lots of Stephanie Wolfs, none of them seemed to be me. So I don't think I have any unclaimed property in Colorado.
I'm going to get $216. So lunch is on me, I guess, the next time we're all hanging out.
Shane, did you find anything in the database?
I actually checked a year ago, and I found that I had $176 from when I lived in Minnesota.
Nice. Oh, I haven't checked other states.
Yeah, you get on that.